Are you a parent navigating the challenges of your child's learning journey? Are you wondering how to make education more accessible and engaging? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Learning Disability Experts podcast, where we delve into valuable insights and strategies to support your child's different learning needs. I'm Jess, your guide on this journey.
Hello, everybody. Today, we get to interview Neal Brownell, who is the crazy inventor. And this is going to be a crazy interview, finding out how his journey began. Welcome, Neal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And hello to everybody out there.
So, Neal, I read a little background about you, but I'd love for you to share with our audience how your life began.
Sure, absolutely. I will give you my story, but in my opinion, my story isn't as important as the information itself. And if you can, your audience can use that information to help them, that would be absolutely fantastic.
That's perfect, because that is the whole point of this podcast, is to help our audiences find answers a lot quicker.
Yeah, and I'll make, it's a very long story, so I'll make it very short. My journey started at birth. And I obviously didn't know that until I was about 7 years old or so. They discovered that I was essentially blind. And so I had spent the first 7 years of my life being blind. During that period of time, there was a lot of things that happened, you know, the adults. First, I want to say is that I hold nothing against anyone for anything that ever happened to me, because they did not have the information to know the difference. So when I want to explain this so everybody understands, I had the privilege of spending 7 years of my life getting to know people by sensing their spirit rather than seeing their physical being. And because of that, I have a really difficult time with somebody telling me that so-and-so over there isn't as good, whatever characteristic that they throw out at me, whether it, be color or hair color, or you name it. It just isn't there. I see the spirit that is in front of me and how magnificent that spirit is. And other people have come back and says, well, Neal, there's a lot of evil in the world. And I said, yeah, there is evil in the world, but I will tell you right now that I have never, I'm 66 years old, I have never run into a person that I sensed was evil. I sensed they were upset. I sensed that they were striking out because they didn't understand. I sensed all these other things, but I never sensed that they were evil. So I want to so I want to start with that. So during those first 7 years, my parents abused me tremendously, physically and mentally. But like I said, I was really confused, especially when I was a little boy, because I felt love. They were abusing me, but I felt love. And I didn't figure it out until I was older. And I said, they didn't have any of the tools that I have. The tools that they had was what they had and what they could go with. And they were trying desperately to help me. And they disliked themselves as much as they were upset with me because they couldn't reach me. So it had nothing to do with whether they loved me or not. In fact, it had everything to do with the fact that they loved me. They were trying so hard, but they just didn't have the information.
And I don't know if this is relevant or appropriate to ask. If not, please let me know. But was it physical abuse or verbal abuse or mental abuse?
It was both. It was both. My mother used to have me sit down, and I am dyslexic, although because I was born essentially blind and I didn't even start to see the letters until I was almost 8 years old, I always equated that with, well, I got a late start, and I'm not, I'm not disciplined enough because I'm mixing the words up and things. And so I need to be more disciplined. But no, my mother used to have me sit down, and God bless her. My mother grew enormously in her lifetime. I just marvel at how far she had come. She would sit me down, and when she got frustrated because I couldn't read something, she would start literally punching me in the head and screaming at me and telling me how stupid I was and so on and so forth. But like I said, I know that sounds horrible, but she was trying
And I don't know if this is relevant or appropriate to ask. If not,
please,
please let me
please,
know. But was it
please.
physical abuse or verbal abuse or mental abuse?
It was both. It was both. My mother used to have me sit down, and I have to look. I'm 66, so I'm looking back at an entire lifetime, and I've got to look back at her lifetime. And she went through enormous abuse of her own growing up. And so that was the way you reacted. You just, when something didn't work, you just started, her father would beat her up. And so that was just passed on. And interesting enough, on her deathbed, she and I didn't part the very best of ways, because in that sense, she never let me grow up. And so I was always that little Neal. And so I said, look, if you're not going to respect me, I love you very much, but I am just going to part ways, and I'm going to wish you the best of the world, but I'm not going to continue to let you run me down. So we parted ways, and on her deathbed, she sent a message to me, and the message was, please break the generational curse. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And my daughter called me up and told me this, and my daughter's name is Jess. And I said, Jess, we have been lucky enough to live at a time when I was having problems with our kids when they were very young. I got on the phone, I got on the computer, I found people that had the information I needed in order to break that generational curse, at least as far as it goes with my immediate family. I'm so proud of our kids. Both of them are doing so well, and they went through a lot. Their mama died when they were 38 years old, or when she was 38 years old.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of other things happened over a 4-month period. Uncles died, aunts died. It was like every time I went to the door it's like, no, I don't want to answer this door, because somebody else will have died. But I wasn't so much worried about me. I was really worried about the kids, because Jesse was 15 and David was 11. And I was talking to friends of mine, and I says, at that time, I've got 40 years of experience. I've got 40 years of loss. I know how to kind of cope with these things. These kids have never had any loss. And now they've had 7 or 8 in a month, or in 4 months, I'm sorry. In 4 months they had it. And so I actually went to some counselors, and I was very, very blessed to have those counselors. And the counselors told me that if the kids wound up growing up without being on drugs or alcohol or self-destructive things, then we'll be dancing in the streets. And that's what we're doing now, because they're both doing extremely well. They have their own families, and I'm so proud of them.
That's awesome. And that's heartbreaking that the counselors' hopes were just that they would not become addicted to drugs or alcohol.
Well, at the time, you got to understand that counselors see people that are self-destructive all the time.
Right.
And lots of times, in comparison to what these kids were going through, they didn't have any reason to be self-destructive. So they're like, man, these kids have so much to be self-destructive about. They just want to run away from the world. If we can keep them solidly on their feet and tell them there is a future, you will do fine, and just guide them along the way, then they will be fine.
Well, kudos to you, because obviously you did a great job.
Well, thank you so much. My lady Linda came along 4 years after their mama died, and she took on the burden of finish raising those kids, and she did not have to do that. And she did it. There was one particular time, my son being very strong-willed, Linda said something to him, and I kind of cringed, because I was sure that there was about to be a battle, and all of a sudden David's like, okay, just treated her exactly like he would have treated mom, and did the task.
Awesome.
Is your child struggling with school, feeling overwhelmed? Introducing 3D Learning Experts, your child's personal tutor. Our expert educators provide personalized, one-on-one support tailored specifically to teach to your child's learning style. We specialize in helping students with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and similar learning challenges. Our tutors are trained to provide effective strategies for reading, spelling, writing, and math. With our innovative virtual platform, your child can learn from the comfort of their own home. No more commuting or scheduling conflicts. Give your child the boost they need to succeed. Experience the difference with 3D Learning Experts.
So tell us, can you see now?
Yes, about 11 years ago. I'm an extremely spiritual person, as I've told you, because I can feel people's spirits. I looked at Linda and I said, you know, I think I'm going to write a book. And she says, what's it about? I don't know. Literally, I don't know, but something inside of me tells me I should write a book. And as you know, as a dyslexic, most dyslexics don't write. And so I didn't write for the most part. And so she was kind of shocked that I was going to do this. But I sat down and I started writing. And the first thing that I wrote was about a big tree and a little tree. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? A big tree and a little tree? Where am I going with this? And I'm kind of looking up, and a story came to mind. And it was actually a story. My brother, when he was 19 years old, was killed in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
And just a month before his death, my girlfriend, who became my wife, wanted to climb a mountain. Well, I didn't want to climb a mountain, but you know I'm not going to let my girlfriend climb a mountain with my brother.
Oh.
So, right. So the three of us went up this mountain. Well, I'm an inventor. An inventor notices things and asks questions. And so at the bottom of the mountain, when I started up there, I noticed all the trees were big, robust, beautiful trees. But the closer we got to the top, the smaller and scraggly and stouter the trees got. And as an inventor, you always ask questions. And so I asked the question. I said, okay, then which tree is better? And I've actually, we've been able to teach classes about this. And I tell the kids, as an inventor, what do I mean by better? Right? And the kids will kind of scratch their head and think about it. And so as we go along, I tell them the story about the fact that if you switch the tree's roles and put the little tree at the bottom of the mountain and the big tree at the top of the mountain, they both die. So because of that, neither one is better than the other. They just have their special place in this world. And that is where the book started. And then I went on to think of other stories that came about throughout my life. And this is another story that I use in our class that we teach. I look at the kids and I say, how do you feel about a boy who shows up to the basketball courts? He gets on a team. He then puts his hands in his pockets and walks up and down the court while everybody else plays. Right? And you can see the confused look on the kids' faces. And I always leave the question hanging. We move on to something else. I said, give that some thought for a while and we'll come back to it. And I said, okay, we're coming back to the story of the boy who put his hands in his pockets while everybody else played. I said, when I was in high school, I started out playing basketball very young, and I am not a natural athlete. I was terrible, and everybody let me know. Of course, when you can't see well, you're not very good. It doesn't help. Right? Well, by the time I was a senior in high school, I had worked really, really hard, and I was one of the best players in the school. And so because of that, they asked me if I would be one of the captains on the gym basketball team, because our gym basketball teams played against each other, right? So I went ahead and I picked my team, and one of the boys I picked, well, is not his real name, but is a boy by the name of Bobby. And most of the kids in the school didn't like Bobby. They told him he was stupid, he was this, he was that. And so we went out, and the other players, by the way, I picked were very good players, the other three players. So when we went out and we started playing, Bobby just put his hands in his pockets and he started walking up and down the court. And with this, the kids along the side were just mocking him and telling him everything. And Bobby wouldn't even try. And so I told Bobby, says, you hang in there. I don't know why this is going to work out, but something inside of me tells me this is going to work out. Well, throughout all of the games, we wound up being the best high school gym team.
Wow.
Okay. So because of that, we were chose to play against an all-star team that was made up of high school players on our high school team. And just to let you know how good that team was, I was also on that team. That team was 16th in New York State that year. So we were really, really good. So everybody told me that you cannot beat this team. They are too good for you. Even if you didn't have Bobby, you can't beat them. But because you do have Bobby, there's not a chance. And I said, well, just show up and let's find out, And one of the things that I know and knew then is that they were an all-star team. And all-star teams tend not to play as a team. So if I could get my team to play as a team, we stood a chance. So the game was really close all the way through. And Bobby literally just had his hands in his pockets and he just walked up and down the court and wouldn't help at all. And I just kept telling him, you hang in there. Something's going to happen. You just hang in there, And there was just a few seconds left in the game. The game was tied. The other team had the ball and I fouled out. So it's like, what can I do? And so I called a timeout. I called everybody over. Everybody came over except Bobby. And so I called Bobby over. I said, Bobby, get over here. And when he got into the huddle, I looked at the other guys. I said, this is Bobby's time. I said, when they bring the ball in, because they are an all-star team, they might make one pass, maybe. I said, so you cover that guy. When they shoot, they will shoot with a second or two left on the clock. I want you all to crash the boards and get the rebound. I instantly turned and looked at Bobby. I said, Bobby, I want you to go down to the other end of the court. And I want you to stand underneath our basket with your hands in your pocket. In other words, act exactly the way you've been acting all along. I said, when they get the rebound, you turn and you pass to Bobby as fast as you can. I said, Bobby, all you have to do is catch the ball and make a layup, and you beat one of the best teams in the state. Well, that's exactly what happened. He caught the ball, he made the basket, and the most beautiful part about that story is all those kids that were telling him that he was nothing were now cheering and hugging him. And the whole story goes is, do not ever underestimate anyone. Do not look at what they can't do. Look at what they can do. And so that's the story of Bobby.
That's a beautiful story. And it really resonates with dyslexic students who feel like failures because they can't keep up with their classmates with reading. And then once they get an opportunity, they can catch up and surpass their classmates.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's another thing about You're Amazing, I'll Prove It. The book that I wrote is that I've told you those two stories. And what happens here is that by the time I made it to 5th grade, I was doing so poorly that they decided that I was never going to achieve anything. So they were going to put me in a special school for slow kids and just basically get rid of me and push me along the side. So I went to this special school, and there I met my first guardian angel. I met Mrs. Anderson. Mrs. Anderson was a retired teacher that was just teaching a small group of kids. She did two things, unbelievably simple and yet unbelievably important. The first thing she did was she didn't listen to what everybody else said about this little boy. Everybody told her that this little boy was useless, and she says, no, I'm going to find out for myself. So she watched me, and she saw what I liked to do and what I didn't like to do. She then came up to me and she knelt down on her knees. Now, this is an elderly woman. And she kneels down on her knees and she looks this little 10-year-old boy in the eye and she goes, "You're smart." Well, I was 10 years old and I had been taught that I was stupid all those years, and the brain isn't going to accept this new information. It's just going to turn it off. And so I looked at her and I said, "No, I'm stupid." And she says, "No, you're smart, and I'll prove it." Well, thanks to my wife and my first wife, I have the composition book that I worked in with Mrs. Anderson. I would have thrown it away. I didn't think it was worth anything, you know. And so when we started teaching the classes, I can actually get out this composition book and show them what Mrs. Anderson did. I didn't know, I couldn't read it all. So I had no idea the work that I was doing, what grade level it was on, but I knew I could do it. And after every single time that I did a paper, she would hold it up in front of my face and she would say, "See, I told you you're smart, and this proves it."
Is your child struggling with school, feeling overwhelmed? Introducing 3D Learning Experts, your child's personal tutor. Our expert educators provide personalized, one-on-one support tailored specifically to teach to your child's learning style. We specialize in helping students with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and similar learning challenges. Our tutors are trained to provide effective strategies for reading, spelling, writing, and math. With our innovative virtual platform, your child can learn from the comfort of their own home. No more commuting or scheduling conflicts. Give your child the boost they need to succeed. Experience the difference with 3D Learning Experts.
So if you're going to try to reach someone who has shut down, like dyslexics tend to do, you have to get into their brain in a way that they don't know what you're actually doing. I know that sounds a little bit bad on one side, but that's where the trees come in. They have no idea that I'm teaching them that everything has its place on this planet, and that includes you. And so as we go through the book, they make up their own mind that they are worth something, and then they can move on.
That's great. So you keep mentioning your classes. What kind of classes are they?
I was shocked when Linda and I went to our first book show. There was somebody there that walked up and said, "Hey, we have classes in," it was St. Mary of the Snow, Catholic classes, "and we have some kids that have low self-esteem. Will you come and teach it?" I'm like, I had no idea. I had no concept of going and teaching this, none whatsoever. But instantaneously, I said, "Sure, we will," And they walk away, and Linda and I looked at each other and said, "I have no idea what we're going to do, but we're going to have to figure it out." And so we went through my inventiveness is what we did, is that everything that happens to you in your life shapes the way you think. And so I wanted to show the kids how I determined that they are worth something. In fact, that's how I start the class. I congratulate each and every person in that room for being absolutely amazing. I said, I know for a fact that you are all amazing, even though I don't know any one of you, but I'm here to prove it. And so I go through 3 years. I have 1978, which is the year I graduated, and that was the year of the big tree and the little tree. Okay. And so I say we're going to visit that year for, as we go along. We're also going to visit 1969 and we're going to visit 1958. Well, because I'm an inventor and I know that kids absolutely love to know things about inventions, I go to 1958 and I said, so what was happening in 1958 that might affect my life? So, well, Barbie was invented, the Barbie doll, and all the kids are like, wow, 19, that's cool. That's, so you automatically have their attention at that point. I also tell them that the television actually has, depending on how you want to look at it, it was invented about 20 years prior to that. But in 1958, it wasn't mainstream. Most homes did not have a television. The kids are sitting back, they don't have a television? Just most people wouldn't have a television for another 6 years. So that was the year that I was born. Then we go to 69. And I asked somebody, said, what happened in 1969? It's probably the most famous year of all times. And one kid said, the Mets won the series. I said, well, that is true, but that's not what made it so famous. That was the year of the moon landing. And not only was it the year of the moon landing, but my parents worked for the company who built the Saturn V rockets. So as a young boy, an inventor, I got to go through the factories and see these mammoth machines being built. And I have photographs and I hang them up on a timeline and all this kind of stuff. And then I go to 1978, and that was, well, disco was in. We couldn't find a whole lot in 1978, but we did find 2 years before that, there was an invention that came out on the market that I saw for the first time in 1978. And I was like the experts. I said, who would ever want that? It's a piece of junk. It's going nowhere. And it was the Apple computer.
Ah.
Yeah. And all the kids like, you didn't think that was important? So we go through those years, and then, I asked the questions. Okay, in 1978, I asked the question about the big tree and the little tree. So that's a question we want to deal with. And then in 1978, we also dealt with Bobby. And so I wanted them to hear that story. And then in 1969 was the year that Mrs. Anderson intervened and changed my life forever. And I learned from that story is that all it takes is one person to care about another human being to change their life for the better forever. And the other one that I learned was that because of my spirituality, being able to feel people's spirit, just people are good. People are really good. Yeah, they make bad decisions. They do bad things, but that doesn't mean that they're evil. We just have to work and get information out there so they understand that not only are they worth something, but the people around them are worth something. And when the class is over, it was a very difficult class for me to teach the first time because when I wrote the story about little Neal, the things I'm telling you about being born blind and so on and so forth, I hadn't thought about that in more than 50 years. I went on with my life. I wasn't going back there. And so when I started going back there, Linda walked in the house one day and I'm sitting in my chair and tears are running down my face, and she says, sweetie, what's the matter? And I said, something inside of me told me to write this book. I said, and it's a really good book and it's going to help people. I said, but now they're not only telling me that I have to revisit a time in my life that I never intended on going back to, but I have to stand up in front of crowds and tell the story to them. And I told her at the time, I don't know if I can do it. It's going to be really, really difficult. But because of it, at the end of our classes, and we've taught a number, there's two things that have happened. One of them blows me away completely, and the other one I expected. The first one is the kids, when I sign the books, you know, they come up and say, will you sign the books? And so, by the way, that was one of my biggest fears. I had more of a fear of signing the books than I did standing up and talking to the people. I can't spell. Right. And so now I'm going to sit down in front of these kids and not be able to spell. Right. And so when I gave the class, I hold up Mrs. Anderson's books. Mrs. Anderson never once said this word spelled wrong. She just said, what a great story, you know? And so I underlined all the words that were spelled wrong. And I said, see, I can't spell and I still can't. And the kids will start laughing. This one little boy, his name was Nathan. And I told him, I told all the kids, when you come up, just tell me how to spell your name and I'll write it down and then I'll sign it, right? So this little boy comes up, he's got this little grin on his face, beautiful young man, right? And he goes, N, A, and then he stops. I said, and, right? And he goes, T, right? And he stops. And I'm going, I said, you know I can't spell. And he starts laughing. And we both were just having so much fun. He was teasing me in a loving way. And it was just so much fun to see it. So I had kids come up to me and they whisper in my ear and they say, I'm the one that everybody's bullying. And after seeing your class, I feel so much better. And I'm like, wow, you know, that's wonderful. I'm so happy that I was able to help somebody, you know. But the one that blows me away, and it's happened many times, is kids walk up to me and they whisper in my ear and they say, I am the bully. And after seeing your class, I really need to look deeper.
Wow.
Yeah. My class is all about the fact that you hurt yourself when you discount someone else. Because if you discount that person and someday you need them, who have you hurt the most? You've hurt yourself. And so when the kids walk away, they're like, yeah, you know, everybody wants to, you know, help themselves as much as they possibly can. So if they understand that if you treat this person with value, someday down the road, it might be an hour from now, it might be years from now, but someday down the road, they will remember that you treated them with respect. And that person will then come back and say, yeah, I'll help out Neal. You know, he treated me good back then. And so just don't close those doors.
That's great. So you haven't told us what your crazy invention is yet.
It's not so much a crazy invention. I do have an invention. My lady wants me to tell you about the fact that my son is also dyslexic and wasn't discovered till he was dyslexic until very recently, when they discovered that his 9-year-old son is dyslexic. And that's when we went out and got the dyslexic version of You're Amazing and I'll Prove It. We had it all done up and so I can actually read it. I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but people came up to me and says, Neal, you need an audio version of this. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. And they said, it's your book. What do you mean you can't do that, right? And I'm like, well, I get all the words confused. And even though I can write it, I can read for a little while and then everything just goes kind of bonkos and I can't do it. But the dyslexic version, I can do it and do it with ease. And we gave it to our grandson and we had two different versions, and this is the one he wanted. So this is the one we got because it was the easiest one for them to read.
And so did you write the book?
I did write the book.
Oh, okay.
And I did write the book. And like I said, it sounds funny that I have a heart, but you got to understand that I'm going to read it out loud. And anytime I read out loud, anytime in my life, I would almost run from the room, says, please don't make me read out loud. And then when I start reading out loud, the words just start running into each other. I start thinking that I'm going to say this, and then I say it wrong. And I'm like, oh man, now I got to start over. And I don't know if you can understand that, but as a dyslexic, reading out loud really didn't work well for me at all. It was very, very difficult.
I myself am dyslexic, so I definitely understand that.
I knew your husband was, and your kids.
Yes, and so am I.
Okay, I wasn't sure. You're mildly dyslexic, right?
I'm moderately. I couldn't read, and I got held back in third grade because I couldn't read. And then my mom hired me a tutor, and so I learned to read that year, and then got skipped to the right grade because I could do everything else well.
Nice.
So, yeah, like as a little kid, for the eye exams, they couldn't put the letters. You know how you're supposed to read the letters? Well, I couldn't identify any of the letters.
Okay.
I had to do the little kid images for years because I didn't know what the letters were. So yeah, so I'm moderate. My husband is pretty profound, and my kids are severe and profound, but it definitely affected my life. And reading out loud, as a kid, I would always read the paragraph I knew was going to be my turn to read out loud and never listen to anything else that was being read.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
I understand that. Yeah, with me, because of the blindness to partly, and the fact that they just got frustrated with me, they held me back in first grade, and then they pushed me through the next time. I didn't pass it, but they pushed me through. I don't know how I made it through second grade. I assume they just pushed me through. Third grade, they held me back again. And then they said, well, we can't hold them back no more. We just got to push them through. So they pushed me through to fourth. And by the time I made it to fifth was when they said, no, this isn't going to work. Just hide them over there in the corner someplace, And unfortunately, even teachers, although, like I said, they really were trying, but they were also very frustrated because I was bringing their grade levels down. But everything works out.
Is your child struggling with school, feeling overwhelmed? Introducing 3D Learning Experts, your child's personal tutor. Our expert educators provide personalized, one-on-one support tailored specifically to teach to your child's learning style. We specialize in helping students with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and similar learning challenges. Our tutors are trained to provide effective strategies for reading, spelling, writing, and math. With our innovative virtual platform, your child can learn from the comfort of their own home. No more commuting or scheduling conflicts. Give your child the boost they need to succeed. Experience the difference with 3D Learning Experts.
I actually ran into a friend of mine who didn't know that I was writing a book. And to tell you just a little bit about this man that I didn't know until afterwards is that he does have several degrees in martial arts. So it's not like he went into the situation without some idea that, hey, if I have to defend myself, I can, but I don't think I'm going to have to, right? Well, when he was in college, he told his girlfriend that he wanted to go get some chicken. And he said this chicken place had the best chicken he had ever had. And so he was going to go get it, and she should come with him. And she says, no way. That's in the black part of town. It's a very bad part of town, and you are not going there. And he says, I want some chicken. My friend's a nut. I want some chicken, and I'm going, and I think you should come with me. So he is able to convince her, and they get to the parking lot. They get out and start walking towards the restaurant. Well, a very large black man steps in front of the restaurant, and immediately his girlfriend turned and went back to the car, and he just kept walking ahead. And finally, the black man got right in his face and said, "White people are not allowed here. You should leave now before you get hurt." And he looks at him and he said, "Do you know who Dr. Blayberg is?" And the black gentleman is like, "Who cares? Get out of here." And he says, "Dr. Blayberg was the first person to ever receive a heart transplant. And the heart that he received was from a man named Clive Hopp." And I might be pronouncing his name slightly wrong. Clive Hopp says he was a black man who died in a car accident the day before. And he goes, "See, nothing but decoration. On the inside, we're all the same." And that's what the whole book is all about, is the fact that stop looking at the stupid little things that might be different about us that we see, and realize that those three hands I showed you in here, right? We go on with the story and we revisit them later in the book here, only I add a fourth hand and a heart and a brain at that point. And I said, take another look and then decide for yourself, are there any differences? And if there are, who do they belong to? And it turns out there is no differences. And the fourth brain, hand, and heart belongs to you. So that's what I'm really trying to teach in the book, is to get kids to understand that it's to their benefit to treat others well. And when you see value in other people, you see value in yourself, and vice versa.
I didn't realize that it was all one book. I thought it was a couple of books. You have a lot of information in one book.
Yeah, I do. And like I said, it really just kind of unfolded. I didn't set anything up or nothing. It just started unfolding, and it came out all the way through. And I'm really happy that it has helped so many kids and stuff. And now with dyslexia, I hope that I can help a whole lot. I'm excited about it.
And what's the book called?
It is called "You're Amazing and I'll Prove It," which is what Mrs. Yeah, right. And Mrs. Anderson said, "You're smart and I'll prove it." So the title kind of comes from her.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Yeah.
And do they order it off of Amazon or?
Yeah. Yeah, it's on Amazon. We do have a website, but we're now reworking it a little bit. So the easiest way to do it is just to go to Amazon. The dyslexic version doesn't have any reviews yet because it's only been up for about a week and a half or so. But the other one has some reviews, and it should come up right along with it. And so you'll be able to see those reviews. And yes, you can get that on Amazon. Yes. Go to Amazon, Neal Brownell. Okay, just go to "You're Amazing and I'll Prove It." Yeah.
On Amazon. Awesome.
On Amazon, yes. Yes.
Well, Neal, it's been lovely talking to you and getting to know you and your journey through this world. And I love your spirituality and how you brought that all together. That was definitely a message for me. I don't know about the audience, but
well, hopefully it was.
I was listening to Louise Hayes last night, and so very in line with what you were saying.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. It's wonderful to talk to you, and your audience is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neal.